Some more Connor Letourneau here on Locked On Warriors. Speaking of the Warriors, they've been disrespected by some mainstream news organizations in terms of top 100 player rankings. And then, Connor, you wrote a great column for the Chronicle. Besides your incredible investigative piece, you're asking questions about the Golden State Warriors as the new season arrives. Training camp, I believe, opens next week. I cannot believe it's finally here. We're going to break all that down and so much more. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. You can follow Connor Letourneau on Twitter at @Con_Chron, CON_CHRON. He's an enterprise reporter, former Warriors beat reporter for the San Francisco Chronicle. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow. Connor, I want to revisit a piece that we started talking about on yesterday's show, answering questions that you yourself posed that are probably the biggest questions facing the Golden State Warriors this season. And one of the questions you asked is pertaining to the youngsters who are undoubtedly going to take a bigger role. In yesterday's show, we talked about James Wiseman, but really, I think two players that are going to be carrying, even more value and taking on a bigger role with the team are going to be Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody. I think Kaminga particularly is going to be important because Draymond Green is going to have to take a step back role this season if he wants his back to stay healthy for the postseason. And they've lost some important veterans. I mean, Gary Payton II is gone. Otto Porter Jr. is gone. So what do you think, man? Based on your personal observation skills, your intuition, information gathering skills, how ready are these youngsters for their bigger roles with the defending world champions this year?
I think anyone who's followed along, anyone who watched Summer League would believe that Moses Moody is more ready than Kaminga. From a plug and play standpoint, Moses Moody I can't believe he's only 20.
Crazy.
I spent some time with him in Vegas during Summer League, and he reminded me that he was 20. And I was like, oh yeah, like I totally forgot, because he plays like someone who's so much older. He's got kind of like this nuance to his game. He's got this like really good understanding of how to change speed and kind of set tempo and things like that. Almost kind of Andre-esque in that way. So I think that he can play 20 plus minutes a night this year and 100% be a positive factor. You and I had a lot of conversations on this podcast last season about how he needed to be taking more of Damian Lee's minutes. Eventually he finally did. And I think that's part of why the Warriors felt comfortable letting Damian sign with Phoenix. They could have easily re-signed Damian. I think he signed with Phoenix on a minimum deal. They could have easily brought him back if they had wanted to, but I think they felt like maybe he was taking some important minutes away from Moses. That being said, though, I am even more excited to see what Kaminga does, because Kaminga, his ceiling is limitless. I mean, I know that might sound hyperbolic, but his physical tools, his scoring instincts, he has the ceiling of a multi-time, potentially perennial all-star guy. And you saw a lot of flashes of that last season. Now, did he make key mistakes? Was his effort level up and down at times? 100%. But I think that he's so physically gifted that even when he makes mistakes, he's able to make up for them just by playing hard and running the floor and making these absurd, physical feats that almost no one else in the league can make. And so I'm really excited to see what he does playing consistent major minutes, because he was very in and out of the rotation last season. And I think the goal for him should be getting him to a point by the end of the regular season where you feel comfortable playing him meaningful minutes in the playoffs. And I think that's a realistic goal. And I think that should be one of their bigger goals, not just for him, but for the team this season, is getting those young guys in a place where they can be key factors come playoff time.
Right. I'm totally with you. Yeah, and we've heard people make the attribution toward Moses Moody as him having an old soul, reflecting his maturity, and Jonathan Kuminga, I'm with you, man. I don't think it's hyperbolic saying that he has the potential of like Hall of Fame level greatness. It's just a matter of putting it together. And I think one of the reasons why people put this really high ceiling or limitless ceiling for him is because of the fact that at 19, even though we were just saying Moody's young at 20, Kaminga is still 19. But he has a feel for the game. Like his natural instincts are already there. It's just a matter of putting it together, man. I am so stoked on that.
I feel like if Kuminga played for like the Rockets last season, he would average like at least 17 a game, 18 a game. He would have been in the conversation potentially for Rookie of the Year.
Totally.
I mean, it sounds obvious, but like someone's ceiling is directly correlated in the NBA is directly correlated with their physical abilities. You know, he just physically can do things that other people can't do.
Yep.
He has a way higher ceiling than Moses just because he has a way better vertical leap and he has a longer wingspan and those things. I think Moses Moody is going to be a great player in this league. I think he's going to be a really good rotation player for a long time. But if you're comparing the two, like their upsides are not comparable just because of the physical attributes.
But how exciting is it that the Warriors have both of them? It's crazy, man.
I think that in the annals of Warriors history, that trade where they basically parlayed, if you think about it, they basically parlayed Kevin Durant's decision to sign in free agency with another team. They parlayed that into Andrew Wiggins and Jonathan Kaminga. I mean, it's absolutely amazing.
Incredible. It's mind-blowing. I don't know if and not just that, they also lucked out into having 2 lottery picks during one of the deepest drafts, possibly the deepest draft in NBA history. And they got 2 lottery picks out of that.
Keep in mind, it's like a lot of people were talking about the Warriors taking Moses Moody at 7, which wouldn't have been a horrible pick. Like, you know, there was real talk about that. And then, Kuminga slips, they take Kuminga, and then at the end of the lottery, they get Moody. They still get the guy they were already interested in. It was just that's going to go down as a great draft. And
Absolutely.
I think both you and I were on the Kaminga bandwagon from the get-go. I mean, when the Warriors took him at 7, some people were actually weirdly down on it because they were like, "Oh, he didn't shoot very well in the G League and stuff like that." And it's like, bro, who cares? Like, he's a freak.
The only reason I never talked about Kaminga during all the mock drafts and stuff is because no one expected him to fall to number 7. He was a consensus top 5 pick in one of the deepest drafts ever. And I think Kristen Peak enlightened me on the fact that he only fell to 7 because during his interviews, his pre-draft workouts, they saw complacency from him. I guess his attitude turned some teams off.
I think that Kuminga is misunderstood.
Yes. Yeah.
There is a cultural component here. This is someone who grew up in the Congo. He's kind of a reserved guy by nature. He's lived a very unique life compared to the average NBA prospect. He moved to the US by himself when he was 14 years old. He didn't see his parents for half a decade. He's used to being alone.
Yeah.
That's kind of his comfort zone. So one thing I heard about him entering the draft and stuff was, oh, he's a loner. He's not really a team guy, and I think that's unfair because that might be somewhat of his personality type, but no one I've talked to who's, even going back to high school has any negative words to say about him. He's a good guy. And I give him a ton of credit for choosing this summer to play with the Congolese national team in the World Cup qualifiers. That was a very unique decision. I think somewhat of a brave decision because if you look at it, high-level NBA players who come from smaller countries like that come from countries that don't have a national team that's necessarily going to compete for a medal or something like that. A lot of them just don't even worry about it. They're just like, whatever. Like, that's kind of a waste. I'm too good for that. But he felt like a real loyalty and went and played for them. And I think that's going to be a good thing for his outlook this season because he's going to be in shape. He's going to have played some high-level basketball in the offseason. I think it's a win-win.
I totally agree with you. And I love the fact that in Summer League, They played him at the point at times to start getting him more accustomed to handling the ball. And look, some people are just introverts, man. Like, not everyone is a social butterfly who's just, conversational and articulates.
You don't want everyone in your locker room to be Draymond. I mean, like, you love to have a Draymond, but not everyone can be Draymond. That would be completely untenable. So, you gotta have like the yin and yang going on,
You're absolutely right, dude. You're absolutely right. And in just a moment, I'm going to ask you, you and I are both going to media day on Sunday, which represents the training camp is right around the corner. And I'm curious to know if we're going to see Andre Iguodala there. And plus, we're also going to talk about a couple of mainstream media organizations, more specifically ESPN and CBS Sports, maybe or maybe not disrespecting some Golden State Warriors players in their top 100 rankings. First, I got to give some love to a longtime sponsor of this program, BetOnline. BetOnline.net, more specifically, is your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports information this season. You can find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this year's opening week's games. I wonder if you could bet on Kyle Shanahan injuring another quarterback by stupidly running him up the middle time and again, although I think Jimmy G is going to be safe from that. Did you see that, by the way? Just talking Niners real quick.
Yeah, that was crazy. I mean, good thing they kept Jimmy around, I guess, right? The entire season outlook would be looking very different if they didn't have Jimmy right now.
I'm doing a new segment on this show now.
Makes no damn sense.
It makes no damn sense. Running Trey Lance up the middle time and again. Is there anything, while we're giving love to BetOnline, is there anything in the sporting world, Connor, that just makes no damn sense to you?
I mean, a lot of things. I don't understand why this is maybe like not the platform to be having this tangent, but I don't understand why we have the national anthem before sporting events.
Bam. You're right. That is nonsensical. It is.
Every single time I'm at a Warriors game, I got to stand up. Like, look, I love America. Like, it's not, I love being an American. It has nothing to do with that. I just don't think it's the time or place. And I think the whole separation of church and state thing should be real. And like, I just don't think it makes sense.
It's a weird tradition. It's a weird tradition.
It's totally unnecessary.
It is unnecessary. You're right, man. That was awesome.
That's one of the things that really, it just bothers me.
I hear you, man. No, I get it. Just doesn't, it makes no damn sense. You're absolutely right.
Like when all the stuff was going on with Kaepernick, that was one thing I kept thinking, like, why do we even have the national anthem? Like,
we don't need it. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. It makes no sense. And I wonder, maybe you could bet on that. You could bet on almost anything these days. Just go to betonline.net. It's the fastest and easiest way to check on all your favorite sports and events. Major League Baseball, the postseason is about to come there. MMA, boxing, golf, and so much more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, it's where the game starts.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen. Now go and make the NBA Top 50 on Locked On NBA your second listen. Which NBA player moves the betting line the most this year? Locked On and the BetOnline odds makers present the NBA Top 50 most valuable players. Find it on Locked On NBA, wherever you get your podcast, and on YouTube. And you can find Connor Letourneau on Twitter at Con_Cron, CON_CHRON, sports enterprise reporter for the San Francisco Chronicle. Speaking of rankings, the BetOnline rankings put Draymond Green, Andrew Wiggins, and Klay Thompson all, I believe, in the high 40s. I'm looking at CBS Sports right now, and they rank, for example, Jordan Poole is like, I think, 71 or maybe 79. He's in the 70s in both ESPN, ESPN has him 55th. CBS has him somewhere in the 70s. And this goes the same for Draymond Green. This goes the same for Andrew Wiggins. Stephen Curry, thankfully, is getting his due respect. Draymond Green, by the way, is ranked 43rd by ESPN. And I'm trying to find Klay Thompson is 37. And then I'm trying to find Andrew Wiggins, who's 32. Do you think those rankings are fair? Like, do you think a Golden State Warriors team that just won the world championship, Andrew Wiggins, the second best player on a world championship team, is ranked 32nd by ESPN. BetOnline puts him, I think, at like 44, somewhere in that range. Is this disrespectful? Is this fair? What are your thoughts on that, Connor?
I mean, I'm honestly just surprised that Andrew Wiggins is considered the second best player on the Warriors.
Crazy.
I mean, look, he was great in the playoffs. You can make a strong argument that he was the second best player on the Warriors during the playoffs and during the finals. Fair. But if we're gonna have a ranking like that, I think we need to look at the whole body of work.
Yeah.
Not just I don't think you should have too much recency bias. And I do think you need to take into account like Klay at the end of last season was trending in the right direction. I think if you want to project ahead, I think it's fair to believe that he can return to an all-star level form this season. And I think that Draymond is someone that people always have a hard time quantifying just because his game is so unique. There's not another player in the NBA like Draymond, and he brings, so many different things to the table that don't show up in a box score. And I also think that he's such a perfect fit on the Warriors that a lot of people look at it and they're like, well, yeah, but if you had Draymond on another team, he wouldn't be Draymond. And it's like, okay, but you can't think about it like that. He's on the Warriors, so you have to judge him based off what you've seen and the environment he's in,
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
So I think both Klay and Draymond should be higher on the list for sure. And I actually like where Wiggins is on that list. I just think that I wouldn't necessarily put him ahead of those two other guys.
What about Jordan Poole, man? CBS had him at 71. ESPN has him at 55. To put it in perspective, some players who are ahead of Jordan Poole, De'Aaron Fox is right ahead of him at 54. DeAndre Ayton is listed ahead of him. Mikal Bridges is listed ahead of him. I could go on and on. There's so many players who Tyrese Maxey is listed ahead of him. Like, do you think, is Jordan Poole being assessed fairly, or do you think he's being disrespected? What do you think?
I mean, he's better than Tyrese Maxey, that's for sure.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, I think that it's hard when you have a player who had just this like revelation of a season. I mean, he came out of basically nowhere. I mean, he was in the G League the year before, and then he just shocked the world and had what I think was a season deserving of most improved player of the year. And so
Easily.
I do think it takes like a year or two even for everyone's perception to kind of recalibrate the right way. Because everyone's just kind of like still wrestling with what just happened. Like, wait, what? Like, is he really this good, or was that an aberration, or what? I think he's for real. I think he's proven that he's for real.
Same.
But if you're going to judge him or like rank him, you do have to take into account that he's not a great defensive player. He needs to round out his game more. He's a very skilled offensive player. He does a lot of things with the ball in his hands that are special. He's got a wiggle to his game that not a lot of guys have. But I want to see him become better defensively. I want to see him prove that he can impact games more without the ball in his hands, which is such a different thing to say than his scouting report coming out of Michigan. But that's kind of what we're seeing right now. So I think that's just going to be a part of his growth process. And I think hopefully we'll see that this year. But I mean, in terms of the rankings that you just mentioned, I would put him somewhere in maybe the 50s or 60s. To me, he's like a very good player, but he's not, even really close to the conversation of even like someone like Andrew Wiggins, who has proven he's a legit two-way player in this league. I wrote a column about a month ago, because it was a hot topic about like what the Warriors are going to do in terms of their financial situation. They're probably going to have to choose ultimately between Andrew Wiggins and Jordan Poole. And I wrote that if you had to make that decision today, you got to pick Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah, I would agree with that. A
lot of people disagree with me, and that's fair. But I feel that way because of the difference in the two defensively. I think that Jordan Poole is more replaceable than Andrew Wiggins. And when you're building a roster, you have to think about it in those terms. Like, can we go out and get someone who can replicate what this person, maybe, or multiple people who can replicate aspects of this player? Which is why, to me, like, Gary Payton II's loss is so huge. You're not going to find anyone like Gary Payton II.
Yeah.
He's such a unique player, especially defensively.
Yeah.
I don't think
know,
there's
man.
anyone that's going to like fill that void,
That's just that topic bums me out every time. But what are you going to do at this point? But how much of a motivating factor do you think it's going to be that so many of these vitally important players, Andrew Wiggins, Jordan Poole, Draymond Green, the two players they picked up this offseason, JaMychal Green and Dante DiVincenzo, James Wiseman, maybe to a certain extent, they're all playing for maybe Klay Thompson as well. His is coming up in 2 years, but they're all playing for new contracts. Which is always something that motivates players, gives them that extra push in terms of emphasis and in terms of, giving that extra effort. Do you think that's going to play a factor this year? Because I think it is. I think you're going to see the best out of these folks. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point to bring up. I mean, there was so much talk entering the offseason about like who's gonna sign the extension. I thought for sure that they would sign Poole to an extension, but here we are knocking on the door of training camp, and they haven't signed a single guy to an extension. So it definitely does make things more intriguing. It could go one of two ways, right? It could be a positive. They could have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder and just have more motivation to, be assets to their team. Or it could be like somewhat of a negative in the sense that guys feel the need to like pad their stats and prove how great they are, and they lose sight of like that team framework.
Right.
But I'm not worried about that just because of the culture that the Warriors have built and Steve Kerr's ability to get guys in line. I feel like they all understand that as long as we just win another title and we play our role and we help our team win a championship, everything else is going to kind of work out the way it's meant to work out. You don't like Jordan Poole doesn't need to average 20 plus points a game for him to get a big contract.
Yeah.
He could have similar stats that he had last season, this coming season. And if they win a title and he rounds out his game a little bit more, he could have even better contract offers than he would have, this summer. So
I'm just so excited to see this. This offseason has officially gone on too long. Training camp starts next week. You and I are going to Media Day Sunday. For some reason, Andre Iguodala has been taking his sweet-ass time making his decision to play another year.
How weird is that? It's
weird. Yeah. So you wrote something, I think, last week that says even though it's not official, the team's expecting him to come back. Have you heard anything else? I'm guessing we're going to get a decision Friday. But what do you think?
Like, I forget what it was, but it was something like basically it's trending in that direction for sure. Like there's a growing belief that he will be returning. I mean, if you think about it, just from a outsider's perspective, you wouldn't drag it on this long if you weren't coming back. I mean, that's just kind of like disrespectful to the team. And I do think that even though Andre is his own cat, like wouldn't do this unless he was probably coming back. And I think the people in the organization know him well enough where they kind of like are respectful. Like, we'll let you do your own timeline.
Yeah.
But, wink and a nudge, like you're probably coming back, right? It's interesting though, because I think a lot of people are forgetting that like I think it was during the playoffs last year, he said, I know what I'm doing.
Did he really? I missed that. I didn't know he said
something
that.
to the effect of like, I already have an idea of like what I'm going to do.
So
it's so that to me pointed in the direction of we'd have some sort of answer about his future shortly after the season ended. And here we are on September 21st and, days away from the start of training camp. And we don't know what's happening with him. But I do expect him to come back at this point, which is not, if you asked me a few months ago, I did not. But I think it's because, and the more I've thought about it, the more I think it's good for the Warriors because look, at the end of the day, I know the Warriors play a lot of guys, but like that 15th guy, that 14th, 15th guy is not necessarily going to be a huge difference maker. He might have a couple games over the course of the season where he stands out, but like, that's not going to win or lose you a championship. And even if he didn't play a single game all season, if he was injured all year, he's going to provide this team more than anyone else really the Warriors could get on a minimum contract because of the pull he has within the locker room, because of his basketball IQ, because of his abilities as a mentor. And you keep in mind, like, the other guys who've, been the leaders in this dynasty, Steph, Klay, Draymond, they're going to have so much on their plate this year. They're going to be playing big minutes. They're going to be, they're going to have a lot of pressure on them. They're not going to be able to necessarily be as hands-on with some of the young guys as someone like Andre, who probably isn't going to be playing much. And I think that's actually an asset. And also, like, who else can rein Draymond in when Draymond gets out of hand?
Exactly.
I don't know if there's anyone else who Draymond will listen to other than 100%. Maybe Steph. You're
right. No, you're absolutely right. That to me, that's a number one value for Andre Iguodala. Is I don't think anyone else can talk to Draymond the way he does, and he does calm him down sometimes.
You remember, like, during the Memphis series when he was like I think it was when he got ejected, and he was like doing that whole song and dance after he got ejected.
Yes,
Andre's like 2 feet away from me, like, bro, not cool, dude.
He grabbed him. Yeah,
he was like I actually appreciated seeing that. I think that there's a lot of value in that, and like, Andre's made it very clear he has no desire to coach. He's probably or even necessarily go in the front office. Like, he's got bigger ambitions, if you can put it like that. Like, he wants to be a billionaire. He wants to run Silicon Valley, and all power to him. But and it makes sense. It's like, how about you come back and make a good, cool $3 million a year on a minimum Bettman contract? That's a pretty highly paid, assistant coach. Like, I don't know if there's an assistant coach in the league that makes that money. That's head coach money. That's high level head coach money. So he's kind of it works out.
It does. And when he's in like, if he's healthy, he can still play. I mean, he's shown that, but that body's breaking down. I'm excited to see you in Media Day, man. And for folks who watch this show, I'm going to be making a lot more appearances at Warriors games this year. So follow me on Twitter at DogSurfRoadShow. I'm going to be posting a lot of content there. Of course, follow Connor Letourneau, sports enterprise reporter for the San Francisco Chronicle. And again, great piece. We covered this on last show, but great investigative piece pertaining to just sex trafficking, to Akira DaCosta's just incredible journey, where hopefully she gets back on track and achieves her dream of playing in the WNBA. And beautiful piece, man. That's what journalism is all about. Anything you want to promote? Anything else? Are we good?
Honestly, I nothing to promote other than, if you haven't read it, please go read that Akira DaCosta story. It was one of the bigger lifts of my career, and I put a lot of time and effort into that one. So please read when you get a chance. But honestly, like, I was so in it with that I wasn't even thinking about anything else. Like, I wasn't like planning ahead other stories. I'm kind of figuring that out now. So
yeah, well, it's out, it's available. It's a great read. Subscribe to the San Francisco Chronicle, folks. It is how our democracy survives, is from newspaper reporting. It really is. And thanks as always for coming on, brother. Been a while, man. Missed you. Good to see you. I think that's it.
Follow the show on Sunday, man. It's going to be good having you around more. I think everyone who comes on the pod will appreciate seeing you in person, and it'll only help the pod, being around in person more. So I think that's exciting.
Yeah, but I hope so. Yeah, I hope it translates to a better content here. Excited to see you Sunday, and for everyone else, we'll be back at it Friday with Kyle and Mills. Until then, thanks everyone. Thanks, Connor. Later.